beverages involved in this? I think they're all good questions.
Adult beverages.
And they're all free.
Sounds like heaven, minus the golf.
Right?
I could just drive the golf cart around. If you want to invite me, I'll be the caddy.
Okay. You got yourself a deal.
Okay.
Let's make it work. Welcome to the WCIA 3-in-1 podcast. Brett Barons alongside Marley Weird here in our podcast studio on July 3rd. And once again, Marley, we have some good news coming out from the IHSA, or at least that's what we're going to perceive it as. At this day and age, we're going to take any kind of advancement in our protocols and phases for what we can get to as good news.
Yeah, anything to boost morale a little bit. I was feeling a little gloomy this week just because of, we spoke to Illinois linebacker Milo Eifler, and he had some concerns about playing this fall, and it just, from the conversation that he had with the media, we spoke to him for about an hour, and it just didn't look good for college football, and I was just kind of typing my scripts. So sad this week. But now high school football could come back, so that is definitely, we'll see.
All right.
Take everything with a grain of salt at this point.
We're going to chat about your conversation with Milo coming up. You also talked to a U of I professor who had some big-time concerns about college football coming back this fall. We'll talk about the TBT. I'm really excited to watch that on Saturday night. I don't know if I've watched it or necessarily been excited about it. I've certainly watched it in the past.
Yeah.
But like, hey, we got a bunch of Illini guys in here. I think it's exciting and just going to give us something to do on July 4th on Saturday night, maybe after a long day celebrating or, outside in the sun all day, ready to come in and watch some Illini alums playing the TBT. The MLB is back starting today on Friday. The team's getting back in their host cities, going to start working out, everything else. That's exciting for me as a baseball fan. Couple of Illini in summer leagues, current Illini, and then former Illini. One of them is on the 60-man roster for the Mariners, and then no minor leagues this year. That means a lot of former Illini are out of a job for now. And then also something near and dear to my heart, Stone Creek is coming back next year. The golf course in Urbana. U of I announces this week that they have been the gracious...
A big donation.
Receivers of a big-time donation. So we're going to chat all about that coming up. But let's start here with this IHSA Phase 4 return-to-play plan. It was known as Stage 2. I think that's the thing that everyone was kind of calling it. Getting to this point, Stage 1 was okayed back in June and allowed these athletes and coaches to get together in some form or fashion. It didn't look a lot like sport. It was just kind of like a workout, so to speak. But they're together, and that was progress to that point after everything had been shut down in March. Now they're calling this Phase 4. So Stage 2 is now known as Phase 4 to match Governor Pritzker's plan of Restore Illinois, which is also where we're at in the state in Phase 4. So I think it's good just to clear those up so we're all on the same page here. But my biggest takeaways from this, 20 contact days will now be allowed through June 9th. That's important. Multiple indoor and outdoor. So this is groups of 50. It's including outdoor events and indoor events. And if you're outside, it can be multiple groups of 50. That was one of the biggest questions I had because you can't play high school football if it's 50 and it's everybody that's outside only 50. It's just not possible. But if you can have multiple groups of 50, then you can start to think about playing high school football. You're going to be looking at a lot less on your roster per team, but you can do it with 50 people with coaches and such. And sport equipment now allowed. So you can play catch with a football. You can play catch with a baseball. You can play volleyball. You can do all of these different things now that sport equipment is back. Spotters allowed for lifting with masks. That's another key step because these kids haven't been doing much for the 3 months before we got to Stage 1.
Yeah.
Now they're trying to work them back in slowly, doing a lot of lifts with no spotters. If you're going to play football, and I'm not trying to just say it's all about football, but a lot of this is about football. If you're going to build muscle to get ready for a season, you need to lift heavy weights. Right. That's important. And lastly, my big takeaways out of this were fans capped to 20%, meaning we can at least have fans, because that has been a big question all along. Are you going to be able to have fans? Now, if your seating capacity is, let's just say, 2,500, now you're at a point where you can allow some fans into here. All of this, Marley, to me is just progress. It could go back. It could go up. Maybe we'll meet in the middle before we get to Stage 5 or until high school football is supposed to start on August 10th, but we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, and for the most part, this seems like a pretty clear, sure sign of a green light. I don't see any kind of restrictions that would, just be limiting these athletes from doing what they typically would be doing during these summer contact days, besides the mask wearing for the coaches and things like that. It doesn't seem to be, it almost seems kind of like it's back to normal in some way, because they did lay out 30 feet of social distance, but realistically, what other team besides football is going to have more than 50 people?
Right, and in the summertime, like you mentioned, it's not for these summer contact days, it's not a lot of full team workouts to begin with. A lot of these are small group work, or maybe for football you have the linemen, and then you have all the skill positions for 7-on-7s. And as far as I can tell out of this is going to 7-on-7 work. Yeah. You're going to be able to have 7-on-7s, and so you can go throw the ball around and compete against each other and have 7-on-7 tournaments and whatnot. I think that's really promising that we're to that point. You're not going to be able to social distance, though, in that, right? In volleyball, you can't socially distance in that. Really, the only things I can think of off the top of my head here that you can really socially distance are cross country,
golf,
tennis. Tennis certainly not something that we cover a lot here at WCIA, but I think it's a high school sport in Illinois. It's sanctioned. I think you can socially distance in tennis as well. Other than that, there's really not much you can social distance in there. So I think this is a compromise saying, okay, you be socially distant when you're not playing your sport or competing or whatever else. Even when you're on the sideline, this verbiage in here states that they're supposed to maintain 6 feet on the sideline. Coaches are required to wear masks now. They're asking referees in competitions to wear masks. But even a summer contact day for basketball, you cannot play basketball without, being
you have
engaged,
to be,
touching,
you have to be within,
all of that. It's just
feet.
part of the sport. And so, football to me is at the top, of like the most socially engaged sport. I mean, think about, the linemen in the trenches. You're there on top of each other lots of times, all
wrestling
every
too.
play, wrestling. Yeah. And this mentions wrestling in here about wearing some headgear, but I don't know how you can wrestle and, you just can't. So to me, this says, okay, we realize that the kids need to move on here. We need to keep progressing in this. You're going to expect it to be socially distant when you're not competing, but when you are, it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
That's how I took this.
Yeah, which makes, I feel like it doesn't make sense then if you're not participating in whatever drill, why would you even need to be 6 feet apart if, 2 minutes later you're going to hop in the drill and be in contact?
Right? And that's where I can't really correlate all of that, into like a thinking of, okay, well, it just is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm wondering too, how is this enforced? What's the penalty if the IHSA or, an athletic director finds out that you're not adhering to these guidelines?
And how many, and this is not a slight on anyone in particular, any school or coach or whatever, but okay, we're going to follow the rules to a sense. I don't know, when you and I to my schools, it's already, when they did it in early June about, getting to stage 1. All right, hey, are you sick? You feeling well? All right, yep, there's your thermometer thing.
Yeah,
okay,
perfect.
Here we go,
Yeah.
move on. I don't know. I mean, it's up to each individual AD, coach, school, district, whatever else. And all of this has to be approved by the districts. It can start June 5th, which would be on Sunday. So we're talking next week here as we start to move forward here with going out to a practice and seeing a football or, seeing a volleyball match or whatever else in the summer. Basketball is huge in the summer, for these teams to get together and start putting in things and working together, passing and shooting, plays, all that kind of stuff for their summer contact days. And this is for all sports, not just fall sports. But this is what it says about contests. Group sizes should be limited to 50 total participants, coaches, and referees. Excludes spectators. That's the 20% there with spectators. Any additional team members can sit on the sidelines 6 feet apart from one another. During the use of summer contact days, multiple groups of 50 or fewer participants are permitted in an outdoor facility as long as the outdoor facilities allow for social distancing of students, coaches, and spectators. 30 feet of social distancing is maintained between groups opposing teams on the sidelines, and areas for each group are clearly marked to discourage interaction between groups outside of competitive game plan. Okay, if you're indoors, you're still going to have to be required to be under that 50-person max, which we were talking before this. Volleyball's fine with that.
Yeah. Max maybe 15
on
20
a team?
girls? Not even 20 at the high school level.
15 might be the max. because each sport has a capacity for
Yeah.
a roster limit. I think it might be 15.
I can see 17 actually.
Maybe less than 20,
Right.
let's say. So if you had 20 on each team, maybe let's just include coaches in that.
Yeah.
If you had 20, you're going to have room for your 2 referees, maybe a scorekeeper, you know, whatever else that may be, and still fit under that 50-person limit. But that also includes spectators.
Yeah.
For the indoor portion. So that's the difference there. You know, your indoor sports may not be able to have as many spectators.
One parent allowed.
Or any, right? I mean, that's going to be the big difference there. All of these new protocols, quote unquote, are still going to be required to have the athletic directors, coaches, whatever, keeping a log, temperature, are you feeling any symptoms? All of that kind of stuff is not going to go away. So that's only going to continue as part of this. But it's progress, you know, and for 5 hours a day, that's their max for participation. I don't see this as, like you mentioned, being that much different from a summer contact day that we had last year or any of the previous decades, you know, before we hit a pandemic. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll talk to some coaches next week when they get out and get on the field and what's the feeling like, you know, being able to throw a football or, you know, play volleyball, you know, play pepper, all that kind of stuff that they, quote, haven't been able to do here for the last 4 months plus. All right, you spoke with Milo Eifler, and I want to get a reaction from you on what he said because it was kind of a hectic day on Wednesday.
Yes,
where he tweets out maybe 90 minutes before he's ready to speak to the media on a Zoom conference that he's got some big-time concerns. Then Illinois cancels the Zoom.
Yeah.
Doesn't want him to talk.
5 minutes after it was supposed to start.
Right? And then a couple hours later, Illinois says, oh, wait, Milo is going to be available today. We want him to talk. Which I think was important that Illinois came to an agreement and let him have a platform.
Yes. Because it looked...
But how did this all transpire for you?
Right. Because initially it did not look good when Illinois had postponed the initial Zoom call because he came out on Twitter, you know, stating his concerns. He says, quote, schools around the country are showing a blatant disregard for student athletes. That, he later clarified, was more on the NCAA's standpoint rather than Illinois. But the email that we received from an Illinois SID said, this Zoom meeting is canceled or postponed to a later date. We want to look into these concerns that Milo had said.
But blatant is a big word.
Yes. Absolutely.
Like, hey,
right.
I'm kind of worried. Blatant is, hey, you need to hear my words here. Red flashing light.
So what they did was they gave him the opportunity to speak with head coach Lovie Smith, athletic director Josh Whitman, and I guess he had relayed those concerns to them. And I guess Josh Whitman and Lovie had clarified that, hey, we're following all the protocol with what we're doing right now with the summer workouts and everything. But Milo's main concern was, okay, yeah, we're doing fine now, working out and keeping distance and these quarantines and these little bubbles that we're in. But how logistically are we going to be able to have a season? And that was the main point of this 1 hour conversation that we had with him. I just asked him, I said, hey, if the season starts today, would you get out there? And he jokingly was like, is there a vaccine? I was like, well, that's more of a question for the doctors and the scientists. But, you know, he doesn't feel comfortable or 100% confident getting on the field if there's not a vaccine. And part of what he was talking about with the NCAA was he didn't flat out say this, but I think him and a lot of other players want some kind of compensation, that they are putting their health on the line so that schools can continue to make millions and millions of dollars. They almost want to get paid, so to speak. I mean, if the NFL players are getting back out there, the NBA players are getting back out there, I mean, they're getting billion dollar salaries. These college kids are just getting scholarships. And I think that's what we got from him.
It was interesting to hear his comments, and I'm glad that he felt comfortable sharing.
Right.
Because he got a lot of support from his teammates. Mm-hmm. And if you're getting a lot of support from your teammates, that's one thing. I think that's positive, right? Yeah. But he got an overwhelming amount of support, it seemed like, from his teammates on social media. Mm-hmm. That means that those other teammates are thinking along the same lines he is, right? Yeah. And now there's the courtesy retweet or whatever else, but there was some comments on his retweets and, you know, Instagram stuff too that was like, okay, he's not the only one thinking this way, and nor should he be. But thinking something and acting upon something and speaking out upon something is a lot different. So I'm glad that he spoke out about this because it's what a lot of us are thinking and feeling.
It's
right?
all of his concerns were very real and valid, and he brought up a lot of other points too of logistics. I mean, if they're not able to fly on a plane, if they're going to have to take buses everywhere, how does that get them across the country for an East Coast trip when they play Rutgers? He mentioned that as well, and I think they're very real questions that he has, and I'm glad that he was able to share them with us. But here's a little bit of his conversation that he had with us on Wednesday.
The football player in me wants to put on pads right now, but at the same time, like, you just got to go through all these little things, like just leaving the house to go to the grocery store. I know everybody's been kind of like a little scared to, like, man, like, what if I go, eat with my friend on Friday, go out, to an outdoor seating restaurant or something like that. Just like, you want to do those things, but then I know, like, in the back of your head, you're like, dang, like, I don't know, like, is it right? The NCAA knows what's going on right now. They know that, we're kind of at risk for continuing with practicing and, with the playing of sports. And I'm sure they're, from their perspective, sure, they would want a college football season to happen, but do they really know do they really know what we're going through? That's all I'm saying. Like, just to bring awareness to, what we're really going through. Like, I'm saying, like, I'm working out with my team and doing all this. We're still at risk. We're not superheroes. Like, what I'm saying? I just want the NCAA to know that, and just to, what I'm saying, be more vocal. And I'm saying, like, they have all the power of the world. They kind of control what we're doing right now. And just, I want some, we need some reassurance from those people that, that we're going to be taken care of the right way and not just, put aside, or, they're like, oh, they're football players. They're tough enough. They can do this, they can do that. No, like, we're, what I'm saying, we're humans too. So I just want, just that reassurance that okay from the NCAA would be, it's kind of like that, not the deal breaker, but like, they definitely play a big role. Like, sure, a scholarship, and, what I'm saying, it would be nice for if the football season's canceled, but, like, I just want them to know that, like, I just want to know that the NCAA cares, because they haven't for a long time.
Well, good thoughts for Milo there. Again, it probably took a lot of courage and for him to be vocal the way he did. I don't think Illinois was necessarily happy with what he said about at first, because he said a blatant disregard. But like I said, he later clarified in a tweet saying it was more about the NCAA and they're kind of in charge of everything. So what are they doing to take action and be responsible for some of these athletes who, would get sick for.
Right. And that's part of the problem with this, though, in the college model here is, like, the NCAA is not essentially in charge. You know what I mean? It's the governing body, but at the same time, it's up to the conferences. Mm-hmm. It's up to each individual school to make these decisions. And so that's where you have this big head-on collision here of, like, okay, well, if someone does get sick or die or needs hospitalization or whatever else, how is this going to play out? And that's a real question, and no one really has the answer to that, at least right now. And I think that's the big issue. I thought all of Milo's concerns were very fair and very valid. The problem is, I don't think a lot of us have the answers right now.
No one.
Because no one knows.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the big problem with everything right now. We can sit here and speculate and come up with contingency plans and, think about this, or only playing conference games, or no fans, or whatever that may be. But at the end of the day, nobody knows right now because it's so quickly evolving and changing, and there's so many complexities to this virus. And I think, as we've seen from the CDC and WHO and everyone else out there, including the scientists who are way smarter than me, it's not even close, right? I'm not trying to pretend that I'm that smart. But things are changing all the time. I mean, when this virus first started, it was like, oh, you don't need a mask, and now it's, oh, everyone's got to wear a mask, and that's okay. Things are going to change, but a lot will change 6 weeks from now when, Illinois is supposed to start its quote unquote first practices.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I do. But the one thing I do know is that Josh Whitman and college football athletic directors and conference commissioners want and need college football because it comes down to money. And yes, health is number one, and everyone's going to say that. There's going to be pressure for these students to come back because the athletic directors are going to keep pushing forward. They need college football to sustain their athletic departments. And that's just the reality of the situation. It comes down to money in that sense. And they've already missed out on a ton of money from missing March Madness. So if there's a way to play, they're going to play college football.
Yeah, but I think we could see more, coaches getting pay cuts and things like that in order to kind of balance it all out. But while we're on the topic, I wanted to bring up some of the research from Dr. Sheldon Jacobson. He's a computer science professor at the U of I, and I spoke to him this week. He said he was evaluating some of the data that the CDC was putting out and kind of was crunching some numbers and was trying to figure out how, COVID-19 would spread if football season were to happen. So he said if 13,000 football players, this is across nationwide, return to campus, that was the biggest thing. If they come back to campus and are intermingling with other students, 30 to 50% of players will test positive. And he says across the country, 4 to 7 could die. Obviously, those are in severe cases. And he also said, keep in mind, college football players die from other external causes besides COVID-19. So in reality, that's not too many, but there's still that small chance. And with the Illinois team, he predicted around 1 to 6% would have a severe case. He said linemen were more at risk because of their weight. If there was anybody on the team that had diabetes, he also talked about concerns with coaches. Lovie Smith, he's an older guy.
Like he's in that prime category of more at risk.
Yeah. And he said, this is a quote that he said, keeping these bubbles at the University of Illinois is absolutely critical. Also being transparent about the data. You can't try to hide it or cover up. It's not going to help everybody. He said the biggest thing was to share the numbers, to share if there were positive cases so that people can work together and understand, okay, what's working, what's not, which I think on Illinois' part, they haven't been releasing any of the numbers or positive
At
cases
least not to the public.
To the public,
that doesn't mean they're not sharing it with the Big Ten or whatever else.
They are sharing it with the players. Milo said when somebody does test positive, they're notified via email, whatever it may be, when somebody does test positive. So the players know if they've, been in contact with somebody, but, sharing it to the public or, people that are doing research like this might be beneficial and helpful. So.
Sure. And I think that's important that they are sharing it with the players and letting them know, hey, this person had it, if you've been in contact with them, whatever else. I think that communication in an environment like a team is really, really important. An environment like a workplace, I think you have that right to know those types of things when you're working so closely with other people. So the one thing I do know is that I don't know anything.
No.
That's the one thing that I do yeah. About all of this.
Yeah.
It's going to change.
It's confusing, I feel. Like everyone says something different. The mask, this doesn't work. Oh, it's if you touch something, it's on there for 15 seconds. And it's like everyone has a different thing to say.
Are you sharing it if you're asymptomatic? Can you get it a second time?
Yeah.
Are there worse cases than others? Like all of these things, I think, are questions that I think it's just too premature in one sense to know. Like there has to be more data to figure out, okay, these test samples, you know what I mean? And you're putting all of these things into science, into action. And I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
We're coming up on a time here, Marley. I think we're a couple weeks away where some big time decisions are going to have to be made.
Yeah.
There gets to a point, I would say I'm just going to say July 20th, which is not that far away, right? That's 17 days away, where we're going to know, hey, the start of the football season is delayed or moved up, or we're going with it no matter what, quote unquote, but like we're going with it as planned, no changes or whatever that may be. You know what I mean? I think we're going to get to that point by the time that media day would normally be, right? And there's not going to be a Big Ten football media day like normal this year.
Like
it's going to be a
Chicago or wherever.
Usually it's in Chicago. But by the time that would normally be July 20th through the 30th, somewhere in there, we're essentially 3 weeks away from right now. I think we're going to know a heck of a lot more than we know than we do sitting here today on July 3rd about what the fall will look like.
We'll see. Hopefully there is. I'm trying to keep my morale up. I'm trying to keep hope, but
it's tough. It really is. It's difficult to stay positive.
Yeah.
At least for me, it has.
I mean,
been.
I just couldn't even imagine being the person that's in the position that needs to make these decisions.
Yeah. Oh, it's.
Whew.
Yeah, and it's
Power to 'em.
collective. I mean, I was told Josh Whitman's still meeting with all of the Big Ten athletic directors every
Right.
single day, along with the commissioner of the Big Ten, Kevin Warren. They're all meeting every single morning, still talking and trying to figure these things out. That hasn't stopped. That's only going to continue for indefinitely.
Yeah.
Right now, as they try and work all this stuff out. So. I don't know. I don't want Josh Whitman's job. I'll tell you that much.
No.
trying to figure this out and how you balance it, right? When you have a player like Milo speak out, and that's important. I think those player rights and the player thought process of like, hey, let's bring this stuff out in the forefront. For such a long time, it's just been kind of hidden, right? Like, hey, don't speak out. But now I feel like being more accepted.
Yeah.
Yes, speak out. You have rights as a player, and you have abilities to do these things. And Milo said on his thing he wasn't sure if his scholarship was still going to be there. That's been made pretty clear, and I don't know if he was fully educated on that side, but like, if he doesn't want to play, his scholarship's still going to be there from everything that I understand. And that's going to be up to the player. And these are voluntary workouts so far, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Milo's not back on campus.
He is.
Did he say he was back?
He's been back since June.
Okay.
In
sorry.
Champaign.
Okay. Missed that part.
Yeah.
But, that's voluntary. He doesn't have to be in Champaign. I mean,
he doesn't have,
that's his choice in that.
Right. But voluntary, in the athletic world, voluntary just has such a
Right. That's the
stigma.
innate pressure.
Yeah. It's mandatory optional, as I used to call it.
You're voluntold.
Yeah.
That's what I call it a lot, right? Like, workplace environments. Oh, well, I'm voluntold to be in on Saturday to go do a cleanup thing for the community, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. But
if you're not
there, then how does
it
that
was
look
voluntary,
for your team?
but
Right? It's voluntary, but we're expecting you to be here type of thing, right? And we're not expecting you to write any hours down for Saturday.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of how that rolls.
Basically.
All right. I am excited about the TBT coming back, the basketball tournament. It starts on Saturday, tomorrow, July 4th, 7 o'clock on ESPN. And House of Pain playing War Tampa. I don't know who's on War Tampa. I haven't even looked at the roster. All I'm concerned about
I
is
think it
Illinois.
is a mix of Florida colleges and universities and Auburn alumni, from what I gathered.
War Eagle and then Tampa, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Well, we'll see if Illinois can make it past this first round.
They're supposed to, though, the higher seed, not by much. I think it's 17 and
like
18.
16 or something.
Yeah, something
like that. 16, 17, 18. I don't know. I'm just excited to see some basketball, excited to see how it's going to play out, right? To see a Michael Finke back on the court, seeing Andres Feliz on an Illini uniform one last time. It's a bummer Revante Rice couldn't be in that. He signed a professional contract back in Israel, so he's no longer on the roster. A couple guys there that were announced that are no longer there.
Yeah, Corey Bradford.
Yeah, Bradford, obviously. You did a story with him.
Expecting a baby boy soon.
Seems slightly more important than playing.
Right. I will give him that one. That seems like a valid excuse.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited to get to see some basketball.
Yeah.
And some names that we know and covered and familiar with.
It's about time. And I'm excited personally because I didn't follow Illinois when, the Malcolm Hills, the LeBron Blacks were there. So, and it'll be curious to see kind of how they all intermingle with each other. How does Andres Feliz play with Michael Finke, all that kind of stuff. So, and I think that is such a big appeal too for the fans to want to see, these different eras, these different generations of basketball players play together essentially on kind of another Illinois team, so to speak.
We'll see. Matt Mooney, another name that was supposed to be on there. He was a big-time shooter. I think he signed a 2-way deal with the Cavs, if I remember seeing that right. So he's no longer on the roster. But I think they got a decent team here. I think they can make some noise. And if we do get a second-round matchup, it would be with Carmen's crew. We saw that's on July 9th, so it would be next Tuesday, was it?
Wednesday, I think?
Wednesday.
Right?
Yep, July 9th. Yeah, that'd be right. Next Wednesday, that would be their second round game against Carmen's Crew. I think they get a bye the first round.
Yeah, because they're the ones. They are the defending champions from last year. So.
And Dimitri McCamey on that team, another former Illini from back in the early part of this last decade. So, hey, it could be fun, you know.
I know. It'll be exciting.
We'll see. Playing for $1 million. That's the team.
Winner take all.
Yeah, and I think I read too, Molly, that it's up to the coach, manager, whoever, which is Mike Latula for Illinois, on how he divvies up that money.
Right. I think
I don't know if it's all. It's not all.
It's not all even. I
right?
think it ranges from like 90,000 to 150,000.
Okay.
I think depending on your skill level.
Right. Like if you're a big time player in that.
Right.
If you're, I don't know. Let's just say you're, Malcolm Hill. You're like, hey, do I get a guarantee if we win? I'm sure some of those negotiations were thought of when you signed the contract to be on the team, right? Like if we win, I'll take a cut of 140, where someone else might take a cut of 90. I don't know.
Imagine
it's good
being able to sign a contract like
to
that.
Have, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. But I'm just excited for that. So Saturday night, 7 o'clock tomorrow night on ESPN. All right. MLB is back today. Just saw this on Twitter here, Marley, that the tests have come back, and it's surprisingly positive here. The total number of positive tests out of the entire Major League Baseball tests given, 38. So just 1.2% of the 3,185 total. 31 of those 38 positives are players, 7 are staff members, and 19 different clubs have had one or more individuals test positive. I saw 13 clubs have no positives.
Wow.
I think that's a tremendous number for Major League Baseball from this first round of testing. Like, hey, okay, maybe we can do this.
Right.
Because if you had let's just say they had 150 positives or something like that.
Yeah.
If their positivity rate was 7-8%, I think there'd be big time concerns even getting this thing off the ground today.
But what's the point where, going back a couple months ago, it took one positive.
Right. Rudy Gobert testing positive and the entire sports world shut down.
Yeah.
Think how far we've come since then.
Right. So my concern is, how many positive cases would be enough to shut things down or postpone it for a while. But I mean, those numbers are great.
Yeah, I was really encouraged to just see that right now.
Yeah.
1.2% I think is a really, really solid number for Major League Baseball. I'll be curious to see where the MLB or where the NBA and NHL numbers are at.
I think the
especially
NBA
in a bubble, you feel like you could really keep that even more limited in that quote-unquote bubble.
Yeah. I think the recent number from the NBA was like 28, I think. They said somewhere in there.
But you also have to remember there's a lot less people tested in that too, right? I mean, there's, let's say, like 500 Major League or NBA players.
Yeah.
If that. That sound about right?
Yeah.
I would say
more
probably less than that.
You think less?
Yeah. There's 30 teams, right?
I'm not good at math.
neither am I. That's why I talk for a living. So if you've got 30 teams and each team has 15 players, you're not talking that many players. 450.
Yeah, 450.
So,
you're right.
28 on a scale of 450 is certainly a lot more than
the MLB.
3,000. Now, that also includes all of the staff members. So, if you included the staff members of NBA and all of that, it might be closer to 800-900.
Well, let me try and find that real number, because it maybe wasn't 21. Maybe it was like 19 or something. But they did come out with a recent...
for those initial testing, right?
Yes.
That's not even in the bubble, though. So, you get... Yeah. People in that bubble down in Orlando. Tim Sinclair is going to be there, the host of CI Living, and the voice of Illinois basketball. I think that's phenomenal that he's going to get to go down and do that for 6 weeks. That's a lot of fun. He told me he has to stay in his room, though,
2
for
weeks.
7 days.
Oh, 7 days? Okay.
In his room.
But yeah,
you can't leave your room.
I hope he has some good books.
Leave.
Maybe.
Probably no window, or maybe just like
there's definitely a window in a hotel room.
Door. I don't know, patio.
Yeah.
You're at Disney.
Hopefully he has a balcony.
If you have a balcony, I think that'd be a little bit better.
I
you could
survive.
At least go outside, even if it's 99 degrees outside and humid, right, in Florida, and
No, it's probably brutal. I don't know if I would even want to leave.
But you got to get out of the room, right?
I know. Just to see the light of day.
In there. Oh man, I don't know,
like
but he's
being
got to stay in there
jail.
for 7 days straight. They're going to bring him his meals.
Yeah, they
everything,
probably
leave it at the
leave it outside
door,
the door, and
all that kind of stuff. He can't leave.
I hope it's meals that he likes. What if you get like
Right?
something
so.
that you don't enjoy?
He told me the second 7 days, he can go out and be in the pool and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, nice.
around other
Okay, that would get me through week
He's
one.
gonna come
if
back
I
with
was
a great
like,
tan. That's what I
yeah.
told him.
Oh, he is. Good for him.
An exciting experience. He's pumped up to go down there. I was chatting with him earlier this week. All right, Major League Baseball back. That's great for Joey Gerber, who was with the Seattle Mariners. He's made their 60-man roster, or the cut.
Bravo.
Just 2 years ago, he was at Illinois, and now he is on a 60-man club. And as a reliever, we chatted with him earlier this week. He's super excited about the opportunity. Made it to Double-A last year on a pretty quick jump. He's made 4 stops in minor leagues in 2 years. Was hoping to maybe make it to AAA this year and, cement himself as one of the best prospects in their organization. But they really like his stuff. He'd been in Minnesota during this whole quarantine in the last 3 months, and he is in Seattle right now working out with the Mariners. So that's a great success story for Illinois. The bad part is that Major League Baseball and minor league baseball just canceled all minor league games this year.
Yeah.
Which really sucks for guys like Garrett Acton, who, interestingly enough, one day before the announcement that there was going to be no minor league baseball, signed a deal with the Oakland Athletics. So it's almost perfect in that sense. That, they probably weren't going to sign any more players.
Foot in the door.
After they announced that there's no season, right? Why do you need to sign more players in that sense? Maybe locking them up long term, but you want to sign to play. And so he signs just 24 hours before they announce that there's no more minor league baseball this year. I just feel for all of the minor league cities around the country, all those people that work for minor league teams. One summer during an internship, I interned with a independent team, so not a minor league team, but essentially the one step below minor leagues, and it was an experience for sure. But there's so many people that go into that, concession workers and people with the organization and the team and clubhouse managers and all that kind of stuff.
So much,
that now aren't going to have a job here until next year. Or maybe furloughed. I don't know what that might look like for them, but it just impacts so many people. Think how many minor league teams there are all across the country. From low A to advanced A to rookie ball to Double A, Triple A, all that. I mean, that's a lot of jobs and a lot of people impacted on that. So
Bigger
I don't know. It was
than
interesting.
Bigger than just the players and coaches. I feel people don't really think too much about, maybe some of these external people that might be
that make minor league baseball
affected.
what it is. Because minor league baseball is fun, right? There's so many crowd interaction
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
You're there. It's from a fan perspective, it's certainly not as serious. Throwing stuff in the stands. Getting people on the field, doing games, all that kind of stuff. Way more relaxed feel than when you go to a major league game. So I don't know. That just struck me this week of how many people that's really going to affect.
Yeah.
But there are still some summer leagues this year. We did a story this week about the current Illini playing in the Northwoods League and really all across the Midwest area here. They've got players, playing in these summer leagues, and that's going to continue. These guys that did not get a season with Illinois or only got 12, 13, 14 games. I think it was 12 with the Illinois teams across the country, were in that kind of less than 20 game threshold before the season got canceled. They're back out playing again.
Yeah, must feel good.
The guys were excited to just kind of get those sounds of summer back, of, hey, let's go out and play some baseball again. I don't know. It's at some point, in just my opinion, you've got to continue, right? You've got to just move on here, or be accepting of there's going to be cases, right? Like you said, Rudy Gobert shut it all down with one positive test, and here we are 4 months later, and it's okay, well, our positivity rate is 1%. We're good with that, or less than 1%.
It's just it's the thing that I say over and over. I feel like we can't live in fear. At some point we have to move on. Sure. I don't think anything is ever going to be back to quote unquote normal, and we're now in this
not for
new
the foreseeable future,
right?
Where we're walking around with no masks or the reminders of 6 feet at target line or whatever that may be. I think it's going to be years before we get to that point where those things are kind of oh yeah, I remember that summer of 2020 when things happened.
Let's hope this is going to be a thing of the past, and we're not living this reality 5 years from now.
I hope so. The one thing I think has made some positive change out of all of this right? And George Floyd's killing and all of that, like it's all kind of just come together in what's been 2020. And people, same thing with Milo, right? Speaking up. Like Illinois has, I think, done a pretty good job of giving us its athletes and allowing them a platform to speak up through all of this, which I've been appreciative of, right? Not only for the players, but like that we're able to tell those stories. Those things are being passed along, you know, but with the Redskins today coming out and saying they're going to review it, in my mind, that just means that this is going to change.
Yeah.
Like, you don't
it's about
something
time.
if you don't change it. But, like, yeah, of course it's time. It's a racist symbol. It's the same thing that happened to Illinois back in 2007 when the chief was retired.
Yeah.
Right? And was no longer at Illinois games. It just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's probably, and it is the right thing to do, no matter, you know, tribe, tongue, what your color is, your skin, anything else. We can all realize that this is a racist symbol, right? And all of these things have come about because of a terrible thing, right? But people having more freedom to speak up, and let's get to a place of equality and love and all of that kind of stuff. It's a team mascot.
Yeah. Are people really gonna be outraged that it's changed? What is something like fun and cooler, like the Washington? I don't know.
Like, I don't have a good mascot name for it, but it's a team mascot, right? I mean, that's literally all it is. And you can say that it's heritage and whatever else, and maybe those intentions were well warranted at the start. But in 2020, it's not 1920. Things are a lot different now. You know, I feel like we've come a ways in that. We certainly have a longer ways to go. But I feel like moving towards some direction here and some positivity for our world and some change.
Absolutely. And I feel like it almost took a global pandemic for the world to pay attention to some of the issues that are facing our country. As bad as it sounds, I feel like because, you know, people were not living their normal lives and going about doing what they were doing, it, you know, shifted the attention towards, you know, some other important things in our country as well.
Because we're creatures of habit, right? We do not like being told in America what we can and can't do, right? I think that's come up with these mask things and people saying you should wear a mask and, you know, where they can't necessarily quote unquote require you to do that. They're strongly encouraging people to wear a mask, right? And people, oh, this is America, you can't tell me to not wear a mask. Or if I
unless they make it a law, or
sure, but how are they going to enforce that? That's the biggest question I have, right? That's why it's an executive order from Governor Pritzker, but like it can't be a law in that sense because there's no way you could enforce it, right? I mean, it's up to each individual business to say, hey, if you come into our store, please wear a mask, you know, and you have the right of refusal to not wear a mask. Hey, we're going to kick you out of our store if you don't wear a mask, right? We've seen that play out on social media several times.
And they don't want to leave.
That's not ended well.
Yeah.
That woman at Walmart or whatever that I saw, I was like, oh my God, people, what are you doing? But
it was in Florida, wasn't it?
Probably. These things just keep coming back to Florida here. Molly. I don't know. Got a trend here or what?
Floridians are really just not caring.
Don't tell me what to do and when I can and can't do it, right? Welcome to America.
Well, it was interesting. I was talking to a friend whose family lives in Colombia, and it was very strict there. They said, you know, on your driver's license, you know, I have all the numbers, Ones with odd numbers could only go out on this days, and ones with even numbers this day. If you were out when you weren't supposed to, you got fined. I mean, other places are way more strict. So I feel grateful that we're in a position where we're still able to have some freedom with this. If I have to wear a mask when I go to a grocery store, that's not the end of the world.
No,
I'll be okay.
For some people,
it is. Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's oh boy.
Yeah.
Are sports back yet? Can we just get sports back tomorrow? In a sense, TBT.
Yeah.
We're gonna hope on that and you know, be thankful for that. Lastly, here I want to wrap up our 3-in-1 podcast with Stone Creek and Illinois Golf getting a huge donation, $15+ million from the Atkins Group, as they donate Stone Creek Golf Club to the U of I. So it's going to be about 300 acres of land total, about 70 parcels of land that are going to be sold, and then that profit's going to go to U of I instead of going to the Atkins Group, you know, for all of these properties at Stone Creek. The golf course is obviously the biggest thing, and giving men's and women's golf at Illinois a quote-unquote home. They've called that their home for several years, but they don't play any events there. So I don't know how you can really have a home if you don't live there, so to speak.
Yeah, it's almost like a neutral site. It's like the University of Miami plays their football games at Hard Rock Stadium, and they're like, oh, this is our home. But it's like, no, that's where you play at the Dolphins Stadium.
Right, but isn't that like 45 minutes from campus?
It's not even close to campus.
Because the campus is in Coral Gables.
Coral Gables, right? Which is like south of Miami. And then
Isn't the Hard Rock Stadium
in Miami
way
Gardens,
north?
yeah.
Yeah.
Miami Gardens is almost in Broward County, which
Crazy.
is like Fort Lauderdale area. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Florida geography, but
I knew it wasn't close in that.
no,
sense.
it's not at all. So it's kind of like that. I mean, Stone Creek is a lot closer to.
Sure, they're still in Urbana. You know, you're just down Windsor there, I think it is, and you get
Right.
to Stone Creek. But they're going to redo the course. I think that's the other big thing, and it's going to be open to the public, which for me, as a big golfer, that's music to my ears. Now, is it going to be affordable for most? I asked Josh Whitman that. It's too premature. I knew it was, but I wanted to ask the question of what he thought his range would be. I'm guessing between $60 and $85.
Yeah. What's
for
like
a round.
typical?
What kind of course are you playing? That's the
I don't
question.
know. I don't know. Where do you go to play?
I went to Stone Creek because I got a deal that was $26 with a cart. I'm not going to get that anymore at Stone Creek.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be a higher quality course. So are you willing to pay a little bit more to play a higher quality course? That's the big question. I would say with a cart about $40.
Yeah.
Is an average course around here.
They
now,
should
if you
have
go to
one
Florida,
of those.
you're going to change big time there. I mean, you pay a couple $100 around to play in Florida. But that's the difference of style of course, and so I think if you go to the orange and blue course in Champaign or in Savoy, you're probably going to pay between $35 and $45 for a
that's not
round
bad.
with a cart. So not terrible, but this is going to be more expensive than that.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be a championship style course, so it's going to be different. I'm very curious how they're going to extend the yardage from the back tees. Mike Small told me he's thinking between 500 and 750 yards to make it a lot tougher for those guys. It's a nice course. It's somewhat difficult, but you can spray it, so you can be all around the course and still find your ball and play around it, which I love because I don't hit it straight very often at all. But for high-level caliber players on the college side, it's not that hard of a course.
Yeah.
So they need to extend it so the course can have a chance to defend itself. They're going to put in new bunkers. They're going to make the greens way faster. All positive things, I think, for Champaign to get that higher level course. This will be the nicest, and I think Stone Creek was to begin with. This will be the nicest public course in a 50 to 75 mile range.
Yeah, probably good for just the local economy as well.
Yeah, and getting the course back open. It was closed in January. It's been closed since then. The future of the property was in big time question because the Atkins Group couldn't manage it anymore or didn't want to at a loss. They were claiming that they were losing money every single year. Big time business breaking news here. If you lose money, it doesn't work very long.
What?
Imagine that. So, they decided to close it. I talked about making it like a prairie area, maybe some horse barns, I don't know, all sorts of different walking paths, all this kind of stuff that for golf course lovers, you're like, no, but this is a nice course. Let's keep this open. You have to make profit margins and cut your bottom lines there. So for me, I'm just excited it's still open. U of I is going to be excited because they can hopefully host a tournament there, a regular season tournament, or more importantly for Mike Small, he was more focused on an NCAA regional. The Big Ten tournaments are not at campus sites anymore, and they don't plan to be for a long time, according to Small. But the NCAA regionals are hosted by schools, and so that next step in between your Big Ten tournament or your conference tournament, to get to nationals, you have to make it to an advance out of the regional. And so for Illinois to be able to host, there's no bigger advantage in sport, in my opinion, than golf, right? Because if you're the host, you know the course, you're comfortable with it, you know the greens, the breaks, all that kind of stuff. That's the biggest home quarter, advantage.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
In sport, in my eyes. And so for Illinois, that could be huge, advancing out. And they haven't been able to do that because Stone Creek just wasn't nice enough. So this is a big time for them. $15 million donation. Josh Whitman thought it was maybe the second biggest donation ever in Illinois athletics history. The first one being, any guesses?
Was it the Smith Center?
The Smith Center, yeah. Henry Dale and Betty Smith, $20 million gifted towards the U of I. Oh, we got that kind of money, right? I thought about donating that kind of money, but I don't have it.
Saving it for other things. I think the biggest thing with this for you, Brett, is you need to pitch to have one of those like media golf outings on the grand opening. I'm sure there's going to be a press conference. Have the media go and play a couple rounds.
I'm all about the golf outings. If I can get free golf, I'm going to be there. Whether that's the salespeople in our station, like, hey, we got a golf outing this Friday. Are you in? Yes, I am.
Yes.
Is it
So,
free?
yeah. Maybe
Is there
just
prizes? Is there lunch? Is there breakfast?
lunch. That's we love a good lunch.
if I don't have to come back and anchor, are there beverages involved in this? I think they're all good questions.
Adult beverages.
And they're all free. That's the best part.
Sounds like heaven minus the golf.
Right?
I could
So-
just drive the golf cart around. If you want to invite me, I'll be the caddy.
Okay. You got yourself a deal.
Okay.
Let's make it work.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good. That's going to do it for this week on the 3-in-1 podcast. From Molly Weird, I'm Brett Behrens. We'll do it again next week. Thanks for tuning in.